The Finance Minister Tito Mboweni says government has decided to retain the user pay principle. He says this is after considering several options to resolve the impasse over the ETolls.
Honourable members, not paying your tolls is not an option. We therefore have to ensure that we honour our obligations. I urge the nation to pay for bills for services rendered. We need to build a culture of payment, as government services can only be sustained if we all pay what is due.
All right, and for reaction now on that particular point made by the Finance Minister earlier in Parliament today, we joined via Skype by OUTA CEO Wayne Duvenage. Wayne, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on SA Today. A Finance Minister, they're saying that Cabinet has actually considered many options to resolve this particular impasse, and the government has decided to retain this user pay principle on ETolls. Your reaction to this statement?
Well, I don't think government's realizing that this is a user doesn't pay principle that they're trying to flog. This is not electricity where you could turn off the electricity if people don't pay. You can't turn off the freeways. They've been trying the scheme for 6 years along this manner. They have signed the public. They have held carrots of discounts. They have threatened the public with criminal records, and nothing's worked. So when a user pay scheme only has 20% of users paying, and it has failed along these lines for 6 years now, somewhere along the line sanity is not prevailing. So it's all very well for the minister to say we're going to his principle. What he's really saying is we're going to keep the gantries there, the physical structures, but we're going to continue to just allow 20% of the public to pay. So our response to the minister is, what's your next plan? Because it hasn't worked up until now. We have provided solutions to this. We know that these freeways were built at double the involved in collusion on that matter. We know that ETC's contract was inflated after the tender by 60%. No answers are forthcoming, no inquiries or investigations, and the public refuse to participate in schemes of this nature that are fraught with corruption and maladministration, and they are the most inefficient user pay schemes. So what we ask the minister is, please explain what you're going to do about this matter until sanity prevails.
All right, so you believe that there isn't any tangible plan as it is now to force the users, the road users, to pay for ETolls? Because the minister was very firm in saying that compliance will be strengthened. As much as he did not elaborate further as to what plans they have as government, but he did say that compliance will be strengthened, and they will try to increase a number of people who pay from 20% to 90%.
Well, let's see how that happens. They have summoned the public. The National Credit Bureau Association indicated clearly to SANRAL that they are not going to allow default judgments to be applied in credit ratings. SANRAL has abandoned or put on hold this case for now 8 months, the test case. We want to go to court. We want to show the courts that the scheme was introduced unlawfully. And so what, I think what government is trying to say is we're going to force compliance. Now, when a government forces its people who are not willing to participate in a scheme that smells of corruption, that is inefficient, it relies on e-notice and the postal system, so this crisis of legitimacy just carries, as the apartheid government did on the pass laws and so forth. Well, we know who comes second in those situations. So if that's how you want to run a country, do you want to force expensive policy down the throats of your public? Well, bring it on. Let's relent. We will fight this until government comes to its senses. ETolls is not working. It never did, and it never will.
But what do you think might have gone wrong here, Wayne? Because initially there seemed to be some sort of level of commitment from the government side to look into this issue, or perhaps do away with ETolls, because the Transport Minister, Fikile Mbalula, was tasked by the President to look into this matter. And if my memory serves me well, I think we're expecting an announcement at the end of this month, which is on Thursday. But post this the speech by the finance minister today, can we safely say we sort of get a sense of where the wind is blowing into based on this particular point?
Well, the wind is clearly blowing. Even the Mbalula indicated last week that the user pays principle, and he said, by the way, a fair and efficient user pays, but it's none of those, because it's not efficient when 20% pay and that you have to try and force this down people. So and secondly, it's not fair when eThekwini's freeways are upgraded but they're not told, and only Gauteng suffers from a very irrational scheme, a very expensive one, by the way, placed on its freeways, and it also pays the fuel levy and it also pays taxes. So this is economic heartland. So we don't know what they want, whether they're going to try and half toll, which you can't. You either get the funds for the bonds through tolling, or you don't. If you want to reduce the amount and try and get the funds from a hybrid mechanism, you're just making matters worse on ETolls. So we don't know how or what their plan is. Even if they try and scrap all the debt and coerce people to come on board if they pay going forward. We've seen the carrots approach before, where they gave 60% discount in November 2015 for 6 months, and they only managed to raise 2% of the defaulters on board, and then it continued to decline after that. So very interested to see what this plan is. But if it entails keeping the gantries up, you can keep the gantries up, Minister, for as long as you like. The fact of the matter is you're not going to finance your bonds through ETolls. You're going to just to pay for the collection process, which is managed by a foreign-based company in Austria, and that makes no sense at all.
At the same time, I think the argument from the government side has always been that paying for ETolls will help maintain our roads. We had the minister again this afternoon saying that not paying has already led to some roads deteriorating in the country. Let's just perhaps talk about alternatives as proposed by OUTA. What can be done then to ensure that there is maintenance to our infrastructure?
The minister says by not paying ETolls, the infrastructure collapses around the country. And then it's not a user pay scheme anymore, because this was for 180 kilometers of Gauteng's road. So now, the minister gives Tito Mboweni or Treasury funds to SANRAL every year to maintain its non-tolled portfolio. There are a good 18,000 kilometers, 86% of SANRAL's roads are non-tolled. And that's what we have suggested right from the beginning. Had they applied that existing policy to finance just another 1% of their freeway network, which, by the way, is the economic heartland of this country and drives a lot of the profits of this country into government's coffers, then it made sense to use government allocations, which is fed, by the way, from the fuel levy. And if you combine the fuel levy and general taxes, which we are all saying, they would have the bonds. They would have, as we sit here today, they would have financed the Gauteng freeway bonds. But as we sit here today, they haven't financed the bonds at all, and they're still fighting this issue. So, the evidence is there, the alternatives are there, the existing policies are there, and yet to fraud, which is the most expensive in the world. 61% of the administration cost of the finance cost goes to administration. 61%. That is grossly irrational.
All right. So OUTA, they're saying that they will continue to fight the ETolls. Have you decided what you're going to do next after this announcement?
We're going to do exactly what we've been doing for the last 6 years. We will continue to defend the people if they are summoned for ETolls. We have already got 2,200 cases which are in limbo because SANRAL and the government have put this on hold. Remember, in the past where they sort of said, okay, we're going to discuss tolls. This is all politics. And once the elections are over, they go back to the user pay scheme. I think the real question needs to be asked is, who's benefiting from the 50 million rand every month that is going into the ETolls scheme? Certainly not the people of this country. It's a foreign-based company. So there are questions around what is behind. So we will continue to fight it. We'll defend the public. We're not going to relent on this matter. We believe in the user pay scheme. We do not believe in an irrational scheme that did not consider people, that has corruption all over it, to be forced down the public's throat. You cannot run a country in this manner. We need to introduce and processes that are efficient and that work. The e-tolling one hasn't worked, and we don't know what more the government needs to see that. We have compiled a position paper on it. We've done research. You know, around the world, when these schemes fail for far less than this, the governments pull the plug. In fact, in some countries, they pulled the plug before they even launched it because they could see it was going to fail because the public participation told them that. But for some strange reason, this government, if it just legislates something, it'll work. Well, it hasn't. So our question to them is, what are you going to do next?
All right. I think that's the question, as you say, Wayne. Time constraints will leave it at that. Wayne Duvenage, CEO for Organization Undoing Tax Abuse. That's OUTA, talking to us and giving reaction really to the announcement by the Finance Minister Tito Mboweni earlier this afternoon that government has decided to retain the user pay principle. We take a quick break here on Your Story. There's still so much more to come. Do stay with us.